It would have been called a 1,000-year flood if the same destructive deluge hadn't crashed through Ellicott City, Maryland just 2 years before. The first time around in 2016, on the city's nearly 250-year-old Main Street, shop owners like Donna Sanger worked tirelessly to rebuild.
There was this enthusiasm, let's put on a show, let's bring the town back.
But this time,
this is more like a funeral.
Now they feel like these destructive floods are the new normal because this historic town, barely a blip on the map, is a blueprint for developing disaster, real estate development, in the face of increasingly wet weather. Joe Sexton is a scientist who uses satellite images to map changes in ecosystems.
You had two 1,000-year floods within 2 years of each other. How did that happen?
The overwhelming factor was intense rainstorms. Climate change due to warming oceans, changing atmospheric patterns, more water is falling. On top of that, we're intensifying land use, which is clearing the natural vegetation and replacing it with impervious surfaces like concrete, asphalt, through which water does not penetrate.
Ellicott City was built just north of the Patapsco River. Several tributaries above its main street run through the town to the river. Those water currents were the energy for this town, built around a mill in 1772. But since 1991, real estate around the popular Main Street exploded. Developers submitted more than 100 plans to build residential and commercial buildings in about 3 square miles around the city. Most were approved.
We have flood maps that were drawn based on conditions that are no longer true.
In the most recent storm, nearly 8 inches of rain fell in just 3 hours. Intense water with nowhere to go. Sexton's maps show how development increased the intensity of the flooding by up to 30%, and Ellicott City is just one example. He mapped close to 8,000 square miles between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore and measured changes since 1984. The amount of land or permeable dirt illustrated here in red that has been covered with impermeable streets, sidewalks, and buildings is about equal to the size of the entire city of Baltimore.
When we think of the destructive power of rivers, we tend to focus on the amount of water, heavy rains causing tributaries to overflow. But it's also the speed of that water, rushing through towns like a bulldozer. So how do you control that speed? Well, you can't tell a river what to do, but you can give it new options for where to go.
ALLAN KITTLEMAN has been the county executive for the area that includes Ellicott City for the last 4 years, leading its people through both floods.
We're not going to lose this town, but we need to realize instead of imposing ourselves on the river, how can we coexist with the river?
The answer, he says, may be in a transformative vision, literally taking down some of the historic buildings by the river to give the water more space.
This is gorgeous historic real estate. You really feel like you could have to pull some of it down?
I think we have to look at what's best for the town as a whole. We have to figure out what is the best way for us to save this town. And you know, the river runs underneath all these buildings right here.
One of those buildings houses Tom Shoemaker's family furniture business. He and his son barely escaped the floodwaters.
And the water kept coming up and it started seeping through the doors, then all of a sudden it just, boom, broke the doors.
He's lived in this area for nearly 50 years, but leases this space. Now he's going to move his business uphill.
Being down here in the flood zone is not fun. It's difficult.
On the other hand, and the other side of the street, the change could benefit other businesses, like Donna Sanger's. She owns her building and is invested in what the town decides. That's why she's rebuilding.
If we can get through that period of time, then it's a tremendous opportunity too.
Because taking down the opposite buildings means her property would overlook a valuable new green space, a river walk, mitigating water and attracting business to her and her neighbors.
And they know that if they hold on, they bring the buildings back, and the county does what we think they're going to do, that in the long run, they're going to have very valuable real estate.